Guys, what's a good sign that a woman is just using you? I just ended a friendship with someone I later found out was using me for emotional support until she could replace her boyfriend. Signs I missed. When we first hung out, she made giant gestures of friendship and told me she wanted to be my best friend and promised to always be there and support me. She would threaten to end the friendship if I didn't always pick up the phone. She would complain about all of her friends, and even the ones that left or rotated out would never be her fault. She told everyone secrets to me. It would show me their text messages and make fun of them. I assumed she did the same to me. She only appeared in my life when things with her current boyfriend were going bad, and we would talk for hours about how much she felt mistreated. Anytime something bad happened in my life, her only response was, "Aw, I'm sorry." That's it. And when I told her that isn't good support, she threatened to end the friendship. She actively told me that every time she has a boyfriend, she gets bored, makes him continue paying her rent, and then when she finds a new boyfriend, ends it and moves him in within the next week. She had levels of friendships, and if you aren't perfect, she would demote you. She had a rotating cast of people who were always her new best friend. She never had voicemail or texting set up and always used extra apps. And her only male friends she kept at a distance became future boyfriends. She would spill her boyfriend's secrets and devalue him as a person. Once, she tried to convince me he was worthless as a person because he didn't feed the cats correctly when he was hungover. She would often go through his phone and then send me pictures and messages to other girls trying to prove he was cheating on her. Whenever I brought any misunderstanding or problem up, it was always my fault. She asked me to tell her when I felt used, and when I did, I was attacked on a personal level, and she threatened to end the friendship, telling me how dare I not see how it hurts her and that she's a good friend. I suppose my overall point is a lack of loyalty to those she loved, only being around when she was in need of support but offering excuses or bad support back, seeing they use people, giant promises right off the bat, devaluing people, a lack of support are all the signs that someone is using you, and a refusal to work on issues without threats. She had more red flags than a Chinese New Year parade. Yet, somehow, he was the one who ended up feeling like he was marching to the beat of her drum. Story 2. There is a woman that I work with. Very intelligent, very good at her job, not especially motivated to go above and beyond. Can't really blame her given the environment we work in. She was hired about a year after I was. Straight out of school, she's a few years younger than me. I immediately took her because of her intelligence. She was always very upfront and eager to learn new things. I can admit I had or have a thing for her. It is very clearly not reciprocated, which is fine. She gets stressed easily, so I try to keep her stress level down. Take extra tasks on so she, and everyone else too, doesn't need to worry about them. Make sure the equipment she needs is good to go, etc. She's not necessarily aware I do this, or at least isn't aware of the extent or the reasons behind it. There are some tasks where people are assigned to take care of them in pairs, and we were recently paired up for one. Now we also just recently had a bit of a friction between us, and so someone asked her, unaware I could hear them, if being paired up was going to cause an issue. Her response was, "No, it's fine. At least I won't have to do much." That was a pretty good sign. Story 3. Had a crazy local woman who rented an apartment I owned for a while. Big, huge yoga hugs. Lots of intense conversations, yada yada. Begged me to meet her once a week for coffee after she moved out. Blah blah blah. She's super hot. I'm older. I never took any of it for a come-on. Though for a while she was definitely attracted to me as a kind of protector or emotional support dog. She's a total mess on every level. After she moved out, taking half the furnishings with her, she kept telling me we needed to get together once a week for coffee. Even though I was mad about all the stuff she took. Nothing expensive. Some of it could have been confusion. I always showed up, and after the third or fourth time she texted at the last minute with some insane excuse, they haven't plowed her driveway, she's in the hospital, her dog's in the hospital, etc., I finally stopped responding. Thing is, the drama was so unnecessary, and I wasn't the one making all these plans. All purely generated in her insane brain. Story 4. In my experience, she used me for my possessions. Car, phone, talent with computers. Long story short, we started out as friends. It was genuine. But over time, my backbone shut down. It started out small. She wanted to use my phone because she didn't have one. I caved and let her act as if my phone was hers. She didn't have a car, but I did, and she wanted to drive even though my insurance didn't cover her. I caved and let her drive. Computer problems arose. I caved and fixed them. When she got a car and her own phone, she stopped contacting me. That was a pushover to say the least. Story 5. Met a girl online who lived in the city, which is a bit of a trip or commitment for me, but nothing too crazy. Agreed to just talk online and video chat at first, and then I'd want to actually get to know this person before blocking out an entire day to take the trip into the city to meet a stranger. During those conversations, we clicked pretty well, but she insisted on just being friends because she had just gotten out of a bad relationship or rebound period. I agreed to that and totally understand where she's coming from. After a few more weeks of calling and video chatting, we set up a day for me to take a trip into the city and meet up. Walk around, have drinks, what have you. During the last video chat before that day, she had let slip that she does like me, but didn't want to push for anything beyond friends. I once again was totally for that and understood. Finally, the day of the trip came around. I didn't have any expectations or ulterior motives, so I was at ease and comfortable just being myself, expecting to hang out for a few hours, then take the train back to my car and then home by myself. Well, we ended up talking until 2 a.m. when her train stopped running, so I offered to either get her an Uber or if she wanted to take the train back with me, I'd drive her back in the morning and nothing weird would happen from my end. She chose the latter to my surprise and came over. We talked until the sunrise and she was the one that got a little flirty. But I kept to my word and didn't want to ruin what I thought could have turned into a good friendship at least, so I didn't do anything besides reciprocate some cuddling. After a nap, we got lunch and I drove her back to her neighborhood and wished her well and made plans for the next weekend. Texted and called throughout the week leading up to it, all looking normal, and hung out again the next weekend and once again had a great time. And I tell her that I really enjoy hanging out with her and that the next time is totally in her court. She knows how to reach me, and I'd gladly pick her up and do whatever. Except that didn't happen. Her texts tapered down to none and her responses to mine got more cold and distant out of the blue. Eventually, she let slip that she had started dating again in the city. Don't get me wrong, I'm really happy for her that she's able to put herself out there again and wish her the best, because I still think she's a pretty awesome woman. But at the same time, deep down, I feel or know that she just used me as a confidence boost and ditched me as soon as I served my purpose. It's the worst when you feel like you're vibing with the other person and then they just cut everything off. Story 6. A girl we will call Alice is dating one of my best friends. We will call Bruce. She practically ignored him for the first 3 months of their relationship. They would FaceTime, but whenever he asked her to actually hang out, she would find some excuse not to. If it was a group hangout with all of our friends, she would be more than willing to come along. Told my girlfriend, Alice's now former friend, still friends at the time of this convo, that if she had to do it over again, she would have gone after a different one of her friends. Told that one of my friends that she was going to break up with Bruce. He of course told Bruce, who proceeded to break up with her first. A month later, we all went on a camping trip. She comes too because she's still kind of friends with my girlfriend at the time. Bruce and Alice kind of interact a fair amount, and we pull Bruce aside to tell him why what he's about to do is a really bad idea. He says he hears us and gets back together with her the next day. A month later, the day before he leaves for basic military training, she cheats on him. She was hammered, but that doesn't really change much. She wasn't that hammered. He gets angry and breaks up with her. They get back together the next day. About 6 months later, she cheated on him again, we think. She claims mistreatment, but we have more than enough reason to doubt the validity of that. She told her friends to make sure she didn't do anything with anyone whilst she was hammered. When she told one of her friends, her good friend at the time, about it, all she talked about was cheating on Bruce. Story 7. I met a journalist from Georgia while she was traveling. She spent a few months texting me and offloading all of her issues onto me. Then when the quarantine started, she asked me to wait for her. She continued to offload everything onto me, but when I asked to start doing audio messages to make the distance thing easier, she said, I don't have a problem with it, I just don't prefer it. So that was a no. If I mentioned the idea of holding each other on the balcony, she asked me for a week of silence. Finally, after a year of texting, I lost my patience going on a podcast and on television. But the idea of simply talking to me was too much. In her words, finally she told me, I'm not ready for a relationship. It was entirely about her and her needs. When I needed something, it was like an annoyance. It was free therapy, basically. And when she'd passed the step she needed to pass, she dropped me as if I were just an acquaintance. Story 8. Transbian here. I'm still qualified to answer this. She's allowed to emote to the extreme, but when you emote hardly at all, she digs into you for being childish. Every time. That there's a problem. She starts crying and asking if you love her, slowly making you feel guilty for ever asking anything of her. Starts showing up at your house uninvited and without warning, which puts you on the spot to cancel your plans because she's bored. More double standards. She can bring over any man at any time without telling you, but you better give her 2 weeks' notice when exceeding 2 hours around any one woman. Talk about ending it all so much that you can't help but be certain that she'll end herself in your front yard if you dare leave her, which will of course somehow be your fault. Kind of a mix of exes here, and these were all problems. Actually, about to dip out of a relationship for some real cling and impossibility of bringing up issues we need to work on. I really needed this thread this week to remind me not to get guilted. Thanks, gentlemen. Story 9. Not a guy, but I experience this with my mom and sisters a lot. They're nice to you when they need something, but when you do it, there's always something wrong and it's always your fault. For example, hey, I want a sundae. Can you drive me to McDonald's? But I'm tired. I just got home from work. But I want a sundae now. Okay. On the way to McDonald's, all I hear is, why are you driving so slow? Your driving is awful. Make the traffic move faster. You took the wrong route. You should have followed what I said. And a lot of shouting and yelling in the car. None of them know how to drive, and us sisters are all in our late 20s. If I do find it in me to say no to them, they'll make me feel like a bad person and say, oh, you're so selfish. Why are you being so selfish? You're the only one who drives. How am I supposed to get there? You're such a proud person. Just because you got a job in a car, you think you got it all? You only think about yourself. No, you're taking me to McDonald's and that's that. I want my sundae. It's all very toxic. Damned if you do and damned if you don't situation. Like I'm living with a bunch of mean girls. I'd get out of the situation if I could, but as we all know, you can't really run away from family. So, my guys, if this situation or story sounds familiar, I beg you, get out now. I promise you that relationships are not worth it. They're worth more than what they say you are, and you will find someone that will appreciate all the goodness in you. No doubt about it. Women who make you feel like trash are trashy people themselves. You wouldn't want to be with someone like that, and you know it. Ever kick your sisters or mom out of the car and drive off? I feel like this would be very satisfying. Story 10. Had a friend for years who would do the same cycle. Meet a nice guy, ask me for advice on how to keep him. I tell her, she does the exact opposite of what I tell her and cheats on him, or does something equally as stupid. Guy leaves, cries on my shoulder and expects me to pick her back up again. For the first 10 years or so, that's okay. Everyone makes mistakes, as long as you learn from it, etc. Finally, one day after the 160th time of going through this process, I called her out on it and asked why she even bothers asking me anything if she never actually takes my advice and keeps doing the same behavior over and over again. And if she's not happy, maybe she should try to break the cycle and change something. Immediately took the defensive. You're being a bad friend. I need your support right now and you're tearing me down. I'm no longer friends with her. As soon as I stopped supporting her self-destructive and bad behavior, basically enabling her, dropped me like a fly. Honestly, don't miss her whatsoever. Story 11. Not a guy, but I used to have a friend like this. She was a piece of work. You would rarely see her talking to single guys or even give them the time of day. If you were single or romantically available, she had zero interest in you. She got off on attention, and specifically, attention from guys who were either already in relationships or were interested in other girls. Then she'd swoop in there with feigned innocence. Simpering smiles, caressing touches, coy bedroom eyes, and that laugh. You know the one I mean. All the single guys in her group were pretty much in love with her. She was the perfect princess or damsel in distress to them. They'd fall over themselves to accommodate her and do stuff for her, which she took advantage of constantly. While around women, she transformed into this uber-proud confident as hell type. No sign of naivete anywhere. She shamelessly talks about fantasies of sleeping with these taken guys while their girlfriends are out of town. And she only doesn't do it because she knows she's too good for them. She'd also get actively jealous at the fact that I had a more active life. I didn't date at the time, I only up. And it would make her furious to see me swiping on Tinder for some reason. A guy friend of mine recently introduced me to the term Homewrecker syndrome. Think the shoe fits? Story 12. I'm in love with a girl. Like, unhealthily in love. I do literally anything for her. She's been very clear about not being interested, but she's one of my closest friends. Last time we spoke, I told her that it felt like she only showed interest in me, in a friendship sense, whenever she needed something, material or acknowledgement. She responded by saying that she hated that I felt that way and was hurt by me saying that. She doesn't owe me anything, and irregardless of how much I know I should end it for my own sake, I just can't. The thought of not having her in my life in any capacity makes me sad and desperate and borderline crazy. What I'm trying to say is that When people have that kind of power over you, it's most often on you. She doesn't deserve my entitlement or any of that. Still, I spin this pity story for myself of what could be while she's just trying to maintain the friendship we've built for each other. And while it may seem from the outside like she's using me, I'm using her just as much but in my own weird way. I don't know what I'm trying to say anymore, but if you've read this far, thank you for letting me vent. Story 13. If they don't ask you to help them do something difficult or requiring trust, ever, that's a sign they don't actually value you and aren't being open enough to actually love you. People that love each other trust each other. Sometimes you can feel this. If she doesn't trust you with something now and then something that's not trivial, that's important, you aren't in her mind. Psychologically, humans that want to be closer to others ask the other party for favors. This creates a bond between the person being asked and the requester. It's subtle but important. We all do it subconsciously to create bonds. You can also tell if they do this simply to use you. That's obvious as well. People that are master manipulators know about this and use this behavior to control the other person. Stay away from those people, no matter how badly you're attracted to them. Story 14. Don't want to discredit any of the guys' takes in here because they're all valid and pretty accurate, but I think honestly this question is potentially better framed to ask women. I don't know, just a thought, but as a wham-am, I think it's really important to pay attention to how she reacts to intimacy. And how much she follows through on plans with you or any requests you may ask her. If she always comes up with an excuse for either, that is a huge red flag. She may not be actually interested in you and is pursuing you with something else in mind. A lot of women I know are generally not very direct, so I think it's rare to find women that will tell you point blank that they're not interested in you, let alone that they're just using you for something else. That means you really have to observe her actions and responses to things to get an answer for yourself rather than her words. If she hasn't ghosted you, or made some excuse as to why she can't see you anymore, lots of women would prefer to just ghost someone or say that they're not looking for a relationship or that they have a lot going on, etc. Which, in some cases, is very much true. But I have often seen this used towards people they're just not interested in, and then end up dating someone else like a week later. And that means that she's interested in some capacity. In the actual you or what you may give her, you ask? Again, observe that through action. If it's gone to the point you're asking Reddit that she's using you, then I'm guessing that some of her actions have made you suspicious of her. Trust that. If she doesn't want to engage in physical interactions with you, flakes out on your plans a lot, maybe does have it with you but seems disengaged and never receptive to any of the things you want to try, even though you might for her, insists on you paying for her when you go out, even if you ask her to contribute, never wants to spend alone time with you, even on dates. She may bring some of her friends along, and many other instances. She very well may be using you. I don't know in what way you mean using you, but I think it's also worth considering that it may not always be using you for money or assets, etc. People can also use you for emotional support, whether they realize that's what they're doing or not, but mistaking the support you give them as love for you. You may get caught up in that if they just got out of a breakup or are experiencing hardships in their personal lives and haven't quite figured out how to be emotionally stable on their own or for the time being. This scenario, in my experience, is harder to determine compared to the traditional gold digger, user, and honestly, a lot messier. Whatever the case may be, trust your gut and really go off on her actions. And really analyze how you feel as a result of them, and that might give you your answer. Anyways, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 15. Lots of good answers here. I've only had one truly awful relationship. So the following may not apply to that many girls, but I wanted to bring up another thing to look at. How she structures your relationship with her friends. First, if she never brings you around her friends, or if she only brings you around certain friends in a hyper-controlled situation, that is not a good sign. It can indicate that she doesn't trust all of her friends to keep quiet about certain aspects of her life. Second, if she often talks about untrustworthy things her friends do to their boyfriends or about promiscuous things her friends do with random guys. Be careful. She may be playing games where she just replaces her name with the name of a friend. These factors can, but do not always, indicate that she's keeping you around for some reason. Money, stable relationship, etc. But has a life outside of you that she's living, regardless of your relationship with her, or what you think your relationship with her is. Story 16. I've always had a rule that the moment someone tries to pull you down, it's time to go. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not good enough, or make you feel that way. It is okay to want to be better for your partner because you love them, but they should never make you feel worse about who you are. I've been in a happy relationship for nearly 8 years, but before that, I remember having conversations where things were cool until all the other person's problems became mine. You don't give me enough attention because you don't care about me. No, I'm at work, so I'm not on my phone, or I'm in class. It's your fault I missed this thing because you didn't drop everything to help me get ready for this job interview that I told you about. No, you told me about the interview last minute and I had plans already. Some people will try to bend everything to make it your responsibility. The craziest one was a woman who blamed me for her mother's passing, and it was so twisted. She said because I refused to loan her money to buy weed that she was in a bad mood and she was ignoring her mother. Her mom had a stroke. She was not there because she was not in a good mood, so I was responsible for her passing. It was sad all around, and I was shocked when she told me that she blames me for her mother's passing. Toxic relationships are always super nasty. Story 17. Can't pay her rent this month, and forever. Constantly complaining about the lack of food, but the fridge freezer and cupboards are overfilled. Buys herself stuff from Amazon every day, but can't afford her phone bill, so asks for help. There's no job, adopts 3 dogs, adds cable to the bills for $100 a month, and does zero housework or cooking despite you paying all the bills and being told making the money and paying the bills is what the man does. While she also claims it's not the 50s. I'm not going to do housework because that's demeaning toward women. I can go on. My house guest squatter of a lazy housemate was supposed to be my girlfriend, but all she has done is play on her phone, watch TV, and make $0 a month. She acts like I'm supposed to be the golden boyfriend, but she hasn't even lifted a finger to help. When I complain that she doesn't help, she calls her mom to come over and clean the house while I'm at work at my full-time job. It's better to be single. For real. Story 18. My first relationship lasted about 2 months. There was a ton of drama, and she broke up with me during the first week over something that honestly was my fault. But we still talked and soon got back together. I was just happy to be in a relationship, so I was trying to make it work, even with the issues we were having. A few weeks later, she broke up with me again, and I thought it was over, but then she asked me to come over a week later to help her move furniture around. When I got there, she hugged me, saying she missed me. I saw she still had a picture of me by her bed, and she wanted to watch a romantic comedy movie about a white guy and black girl, just like us. We just happened to have a nasty fight and then get back together. By that point, I really thought she was trying to make our relationship work, but when I brought up some issues we had, it quickly became clear she didn't want to be a couple and still held a grudge over what happened during our first week, which I had apologized for countless times. I could tell she wanted the benefits of having a boyfriend without the work of a relationship, so I broke up with her. We were done. Story 19. I never dated any woman, but know many who do this. You're dating, but it has to be a secret, or she can't take the pressure to be in a relationship right now. You constantly hang with her in her friend group, but when you want to go on a date or hang with your friends, she suddenly can't. Gaslights you into thinking you're asking too much of her for wanting common things, hugging, holding hands, kissing in public. Doesn't understand or gets angry when you can't do what she wants when she wants it. X, she wants to watch X movie premiere, but you got work. How is that more important than her happiness? You have to be there for her, hear all her troubles and dry all her tears. The moment you need to vent something, you shouldn't be so selfish to share that. It's a nuisance and it's making her uncomfortable. How can you do that to her when she has X thing going on? This applies to you having a sick family member and her getting an exam soon. She's in a relationship with someone else, vents to you that he's abusive, etc. She tells you that she wants to date you instead. Never break it off with the other dude. Or if she does, she moves in with you, gets you to help her back on her feet, says that she can't date you so soon after the breakup or they'll think she cheated with you. This is the answer to dating even after years. Story 20. Girl here, not a guy, but I kind of know my way around us women. Men, let's get this straight. If your woman constantly asks you to buy stuff for her, but then you're the bad guy for asking stuff from her, being used. Often find she doesn't show much interest until there's something she wants. Being used. I'm not ready for a relationship. I need more time. You're a great guy and all, but right now, insert stupid lies and why she can't date you currently, can all be signs, but these ones should be looked into before you say them as such. We can, just like you, not always be ready for relations with somebody. However, some women can lie through it with these same lines. Borrows money and never pays back or makes an excuse on why she can't on multiple occasions. Being used. Besides money, a woman can also use you for emotional support and only that. If she only talks to you to vent or rant, you're being used. They're very focused on themselves. Being used. Can't seem to listen to you. Besides people who have trouble with attention or struggle with interaction, which could include but is not limited to things like ADHD and anxiety. Being used. Our favor is constantly loaded and possibly have a lot of strings attached. Being used. Wants you to stop seeing people that bring up suspicion or just in general. You might be being used. It's not always that they're controlling. Seems to overreact and make you feel bad or manipulate you when you try to say no. Why aren't you running? Giddy up and get out of there. Contacting only at night? Might be being used. This can be manipulation when you're tired. Maybe she's suggesting again since you're her last resort. Can be signs. Make promises and say they'll do things that they never do. Being used. You should always talk to your partner or love interest before jumping to conclusions, but these are red flags men seem to miss way too much. People users also might not realize they're using them in some cases because maybe you haven't said anything. Communication is key, and make sure to go about it in a civilized manner. If she acts nice but doesn't live up to the standards of not using you, even after the talk, then let her go. Also, the best advice I can give: listen to your friends when they smell something fishy. They have a much broader view, and it's more likely a good mate will tell you the truth out of sincere worry. This is often how men get trapped for longer than they should, because they ignore or lash out at their friends under the strings of infatuation. This isn't just men either. Women can spot it too. Just make sure to listen and look into what your mates say, and stay safe. Story 21. She has certain calendar days reserved for dates or time together, every week at exactly the same time. Here's a little tip I picked up. Humans get through tedious activities by establishing routines, since order helps establish a feeling of must, especially when the reward, a nice dinner, a night to watch the newest movies in a, say, home theater with surround sound, or just straight up cash. But I trust that OP is not that oblivious. It's something that trumps the aforementioned tedium. More subtle clues? You note that you're almost always the initiator when it comes to affection. Romances, or most of them, fail because you can't fake being romantically interested in someone when you aren't, at least from my experience. Though if desperate enough, guys or gals, though rarer, could overlook this part or mistake it for something shallower. Yet she's the first initiator when it comes to bringing you the wonderful news of having something to cry about. Having problems. Not the honest ones when support is needed. I'm talking, I've had a bad day, insert friend name, is being a witch to me. Or the patented, there's this one at work, so on. Not claiming to be an expert, but a good partner doesn't mind returning a spontaneous gesture of love or just go out last minute because she or he felt like they missed you. Nor just sitting in the same room, doing practically nothing. Sometimes in silence even. As not a moment is awkward when you're spending time with a person that you can be open with. Another really obvious one, she isn't honest nor open with you, which often means that she's in it for something else. Other people mention this as well, but I'll sum it up for the sake of it. Obvious gaslighting or attempts at emotional manipulation, like undermining your issues or trying to use the fact that you're on the down low, perhaps dealing with some self-esteem issues at the moment. Or, God forbid, you let her knock your confidence down in the gutter. If you've learned something, that's that, no matter who your partner is. Unless you're a narcissist. And if you are, believe me, your good friends would have pointed it out to you by now. They won't ever accidentally say something hurtful unless they were really clueless about the situation. Like, say, making jokes about relatives, that kind of thing that you haven't told them about. Story 22. Let me tell you about my stupid friend situation. He's young, fit, makes good Google or Apple money. He also has a bad habit of falling in love with street workers. They're not there to fall in love, they're there to sweet-talk you into relinquishing all your cash. Literally, after every one of them. I think I love her, man. I think she loves me too. Get off of that noise. Anyway, that's not the worst of it. He fell in love with a leader. Well, she's like the head lady that all the other girls work under. She's like twice his age and she has him so whipped. He never has money, which forces him to borrow. Again, he works for one of those big tech companies as a contractor for years, so he should be making mad bank. He let me know that he needs to give her his paychecks because she owes money to the mafia or something. She needs to pay it off or else they'll end her or something, which wouldn't explain her lavish lifestyle. He's like a younger brother to me. I love him to bits, but I can't have another one of these conversations because it just sounds like I'm hating on his life choices. He needs to wake up and see that he's being taken advantage of. Story 23. This one young woman I was seeing, a single mom, going back to school, living at home with her parents. I'd completed school, was underemployed, barely making ends meet. We hadn't been seeing each other very long, and after one evening, she's hanging out in my little apartment watching whatever was on the TV, and she's talking about all her dreams and how I can support her goals in her life, obtaining her dream career. She then says to me, and if you want me to keep coming over here, you need to get, and proceeds to list off things. Some of what she mentioned wasn't completely unreasonable, but I was not financially able to do it. I do not know what made her think I could afford any of that. But I listened, nodded, and said as I pointed, "There's the door. Please close it on your way out." She called a day or two after that, devolved into her yelling at me, then she abruptly up on. I didn't call her back, which I guess is what she was waiting for, because she called me again and asked why I hadn't called back, and I was like, "Well, you were a little rude in our last conversation." She said something and then hung up again. Never saw her or heard from her again, and I was definitely fine with it. Story 24. There was a girl I had a huge crush on. She was my best friend, so we spent a lot of time together. But as we both got older, we started hanging out much less. And it only seemed she wanted me around to do her favors. Because I had a car and always actively sought to please her, I was usually the one driving her places. She moved several years ago, but the time I had to clear my head reminded me that she was pretty much just using me. Our friendship went from a strong bond to mostly just me doing favors for her while not getting much time to actually hang out with her or anything. It helped me realize some stuff about myself, and I've matured a lot because of it. I've learned to put down more strict boundaries regarding friends, especially crushes. If you need to know, yeah, we did date briefly. It's complicated, but that whole friendship was completely out of whack. Story 25. They start to ask you to sacrifice stuff for yourself that you're both aware is incredibly detrimental to your happiness or well-being. Examples for me included when my ex told me to buy her a pea coat that cost $65, when I had $68 until payday on Friday in my account, even when I told her I would basically not be able to eat if I bought it. Then she still demanded that I did. Yes, I bought it. Yes, I was dumb. I lived off top ramen that week. Another thing I remember was when I had a chance to potentially pursue a record deal with a major record label for music, so I put a lot of time into recording and polishing my music. She said I was spending too much time away from her, even though I spent hours with her every day. It made me choose her or music. I chose her. Never stay with someone who demands you give up the things you love the most. Also, another time was when my ex didn't even care that I was sick. Just got mad that I couldn't go out with her that day. It becomes very obvious, to say the least. Just don't ignore your gut instincts. That's my main advice. They are probably right. Story 26. I had a friendship with someone who I cared about much more than she cared about me, though she said I was her best friend. Just before last Christmas, she asked me to come visit her. She lived about 80 miles away, so that we could hang out. Well, when I arrived after talking for a while, she asked to go to Walmart, where she asked me to buy her a new month's phone card. Having already bought her the phone itself and paid for her phone card previously, a new cage for her hamster, and food for dinner. There was also a TV in the electronics section that she hinted strongly that she wanted for her bedroom. I said I didn't want to get it right then, but that I might on another day when my credit card bill wasn't already so high. I then gave her money for child support. Not my child, her child with another man who had custody. Something I had also done a number of times previously. After all of this, she asked if I could drive her an hour and a half out of my way to take her to her boyfriend's house so that she could spend Christmas with him. At which point I asked her if that was the main reason she asked me to visit that day, and I said it felt like I was being used. She then swore to me up and down that she wasn't using me, and that she had used people before, and that she truly cared about me and would never use me. To make this point, she said, "Remember that TV I wanted for my bedroom? And you said you didn't want to get it right now." I said, "Okay." I didn't push the issue and try to make you buy it for me. If I had been using you, I would have gotten you to buy it. So I drove far out of my way the night before Christmas Eve and took her to her boyfriend's house, where promptly after dropping her off, literally 30 seconds afterwards, my car broke down, and I had to call my parents to come and get me. When I tried texting her and calling her to ask if I could come inside and wait with her until my parents arrived, suddenly she was unreachable and incommunicado. In retrospect, I think the best way to tell if a woman is using you is if you have reason to feel that she's using you and she swears to you that she isn't. Story 27. Acting interested, then breaking plans or changing plans to bring other people along. I had this girl who seemed really interested and we had plans to meet up for drinks. The day before, she asked if it was okay if she brought some friends along. Okay, first date, no problem. Maybe she'll just be more comfortable with familiar friends around. It went okay. No rockets and fireworks, but it seemed like a decent enough first date. So we made plans to go out again. Day before date number 2, she called to say something came up. Really sorry, blah 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 blah. Let's do it again another time. Okay, things happen, I get it. Don't freak out, don't worry too much. Maybe she really did have something come up. Over the next couple days, we still talked on the phone. It really did seem to be going well. We liked similar music, activities, and she really was a cool chick. Funny, attractive. So we make plans to retry date number 2. Same thing as last time. The day before, she called to say something came up. Really, really sorry. Couldn't be avoided. I swear I really like you. Blah, blah, blah. Again, talked a few times over the phone over the next couple days, but she's a little more reserved after the second bailout. Conversations are shorter, not as in-depth as previously. This is when I decided to bow out. Cool, funny, hot, yes. However, I'm not going to jump through hoops, and my gut is telling me that it's just not going to happen, especially since her demeanor changed after the second time she broke plans. I wasn't going to make a big thing about it. I just wasn't going to call her back. I would just let it end in the vine. Unbeknownst to her, we have a mutual acquaintance. This mutual acquaintance tells me that the girl called her asking what she could do in regards to me. Basically said she's getting back with her ex. El Bombero Loco is a nice guy, and I like the attention, but I'm getting back with my ex. Though I had already dodged that when I decided I wasn't going to call her again. Then our mutual friend tells me that she was basically using me for attention, so now I really know my gut was right. Disappointing in the circumstances, but I didn't really get hurt. Then a couple days later, she calls me. She's all bubbly and friendly again and wants the long, in-depth conversation and attention. But this time, I'm aware of what she was doing, so I just kinda non-committedly went along for a couple minutes. Then said, "Yeah, I'm kinda busy, I gotta go. Bye." She caught on and never called again. Story 28. This thread is old and full of comments, but an old memory came to mind. 2 friends became rival dealers back in the day. I was friends with both, even when they became rivals. Well, kinda. I was friends with them before they got into selling it and bought from whoever answered once they moved into just being dealers. It became a bit transactional after they became full-time dealers, as it does. Neither of them were lookers, per se, but they traded the same girlfriend back and forth without knowing. One dude had the stuff and she'd be there, introduced as his girlfriend. Then she wouldn't be there on the last pickup. Dude A would say he was dry, so we'd go pick up from Dude B. Boom. There she was with Dude B, introduced as his girlfriend. The first time it happened, I just assumed it was a classic case of a girl who knew both guys and decided wrong in choosing on the first go-around. Man, she went back and forth wherever the stuff was. Never said anything because both dudes were no longer actual friends long before her. I just looked that girl in the eye and she was shameless. Just bubbly and effervescent like it was all normal. She was so good at it that I wondered if she was trying to really pick the right one and settle down. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.